Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom Shabbat.
Then near the bottom of page 11 in the Siddur, in the prayer book, Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni, Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni, Od hi leolemeha beino uveini, Od hi leolemeha beino uveini, Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni, Ki eshmera Shabbat el yishmereni, Od hi leolemeha beino uveini, Od hi leolemeha beino uveini. And then at the top of page 10, feel free to join in. This is a YouTube with what they call the quarantine version of Hine Ma Tov, and it's provided by the Jewish community of Beersheba in the state of Israel.
Okay.
שבט אחים הנה מה טוב מנעים שבט אחים יחד הנה מה טוב שבט אחים יחד הנה מה טוב שבט אחים הנה מה טוב מנעים שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב מנעים שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב מנעים שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב מנעים שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה
a special gift and an opportunity for us to share with our brothers and sisters of Bnei Yisrael, of the children of Israel, wherever they dwell. Page 20, this is the abbreviated version of Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Panei Shabbat, Nekabla, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Panei Shabbat, Nekabla, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Panei Shabbat, Nekabla, Lecha Dodi, Likrat Kala, Panei Shabbat, Nekabla, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom Mevorach. As we welcome the Shabbat in the image of a queen, of a bride, we wish each other a Shabbat Shalom. May it truly be a day of peace and of rest.
Amen.
Page 145. Page 145. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalmad yivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'cha hayechol v'yomechol u'chayedcho beit Yisrael bahagala uvizman kariv v'meru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam u'lolmei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, Yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal, Shmei d'kudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shihirata, tushpechata v'nechemata, dahamiran v'yolma, v'yimeru. Amen. Our call to worship is on page 146. It is your choice if you'd like to rise, if you'd like to remain seated, given the Zoom informal format, whichever is comfortable for you, and I can assure you that God will understand. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhma poteach she'arim, u'v'tvunem meshane itim u'machalif et hazmanim, u'mesader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mitnei choshech v'choshech mitnei or, uma'avir yom u'layla uma'avdil bein yom u'bein layla Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamidim lo chalenu leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai hama'ariv haravim. Page 148. In each age we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment we are addressed by the world. In each age, we are challenged by our ancient teachings. At each moment, we stand face to face with truth. In each age, we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment, the knowing heart is filled with wonder. In each age, The children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. Baruch Ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Again, to your comfort, please feel free to be seated. On page 150, the words of Deuteronomy, V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shiftecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha b'derech uv'shachbecha uv'kumecha u'kshartam leyot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvish arecha leman tiskeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim leloechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzehite yadchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiyot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet. Page 151, responsively. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all, yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound. Before our eyes, there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness. There is evil enough to break the heart. There is good enough to exalt the soul. When will redemption come? When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves. Long ago, we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High. We learned God's presence redeems time and event. So we celebrate this power that makes for freedom. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar v'kodesh. Nora tehilot oseh feled, nora tehilot oseh feled. Malachutecha ra'u vanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ze lianu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch, le'olam amen. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני al Yisrael. Page 153. This is a YouTube, an interpretation of the Hashkivenu evening prayer for peace and Sukkot Shalom. May it be a shelter of rest and peace for all of us and all the world. This composition is by Michael Hunter Oakes and Cantor Shira Ginsburg from the Village Temple or East End Temple in Manhattan in New York. And I hope that you enjoy this version as well.
You
Oops. Hold on. Okay.
Okay, sorry, that obviously wasn't Michael Oakes.
Oh.
And it also wasn't the Hashkivenu prayer. Can we get back to that, or should we skip
We
it?
can get back to it. Hold on, let me get off the phone. Okay,
Okay.
I got to go back. Do you need me for anything, Michael? Okay, bye-bye. I'm where they're in. Yay. Okay, what do we need to be playing now?
Hashkivenu.
Hashkivenu. Okay.
Was the second one.
Oh, well, I must have them in the wrong order. Okay. Bear with me, people.
Okay.
Okay. Got to change the order in which I do things here. Okay, here we go.
You're forgiven.
That's good, because right now I'm very stressed.
Shouldn't be that way on Shabbos.
Well.
There it is. Thank you.
In the darkness of the night, when I'm scared to close my eyes, won't you ease my troubled mind? Hush, כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Thank you.
Okay.
Page 154.
Well,
The people of Israel shall keep the Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It is a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth. On the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. Vayom Shvi'i Shabbat Vayinafash. Our tefillah, the central part of our worship service, beginning on page 155. From 155 to 158, we'll join in chanting together. Then from 158 to 165, we will be silently either the words of the prayer book or the meditations of our own hearts. So on page 155, again, if you're comfortable and prefer to rise and be standing for this prayer, that's certainly fine. If you would rather be seated, that's fine as well. Adonai, sifatai tiftach, ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Mageh, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, ve'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah, Rab Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach, U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatihir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Micha Mocha Baal Givurot, Umidoho Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Atala HaChayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. Page 158, Atah Kadosh, V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kdoshim B'chol Yom Yihalalucha, Selah, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Our private personal prayers continuing then through page 165. Ruth Ann, do you have Natalie Young's Yehi Ratzon, or is that now skipped?
Is that what we played before? Let's hold on.
That's the one we had before.
Yes, I have it.
Should we
You
play
want
that again?
that one again?
That's my friend Cantor Natalie Young from Orange County, California.
Okay. Yep. It's coming right up. Okay.
Great.
If I don't want to make a
What?
video like this of
Okay.
myself,
We
I
got,
can
We don't
just
need the
we got a
ads.
commercial. We got,
of a caricature with me.
okay.
Well,
Oh,
easier
I
said
love,
than done. Easier
I
said
love
than done.
I love technology. It's just, we heard it once. I guess that's all we're allowed to
Actually,
hear
we
it.
heard it twice, but that's that's okay.
As long as we
okay.
can all laugh.
That's right. That's very true. So let's do this then. We'll end our silent prayers communally. Ose shalom bibroma. Huyase shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'himru. Himru amen. Yahase shalom. Yahase shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahase shalom. Yahase shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahase shalom. Yahase shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahase shalom. Yahase shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Yahase shalom. Yahase shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Well, friends, these last several days, if not weeks, have truly been times of challenge, and we look to find courage, we look to find consolation, we look to find hope for our future. I wanted to share with you, in anticipation of our Misha Berach, our prayer of healing and wholeness, I wanted to share with you some of the thoughts of my colleagues who have expressed in the form of prayer some of the feelings that I am sure all of us have. So Rabbi Karen Kedar in Chicago gave us this prayer of courage. Holy One of blessing, grant us the will to stand firm in the face of evil and hostility, not to be silent or afraid, to work diligently and faithfully to banish wickedness from the earth. Holy One of blessing, grant us the courage and resolve to speak when there is hatred, to act when there is confusion, to join with others in building a world of safety, understanding, and acceptance. Because there is hatred, dear God, help us heal our fractured and broken world. Because there is fear, dear God, grant courage and faith to those of us in need. Because there is pain, dear God, Bring healing to the shattered and the wounded. Because there is hope, dear God, teach us to be a force for justice and kindness. Because there is love, dear God, help us to be a beacon of light and compassion. As it is written in your holy word, be strong and let your heart have courage, and depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. And my colleagues, Rabbis Stephanie Colin and Rachel Timoner in Brooklyn, ask us to pray, God of the fearful and the anxious, God who accompanies our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, Leah, Rachel, and all Israel. God who accompanies the voices of the poor and the oppressed through our prophets. The God who values every human life with loving kindness. Inspire us on this Shabbat to make our voices heard. Give the people of this our land the courage and the safety to inaugurate and bless our new leaders in peace. Guard our streets from violence. Guard each human life, each reflection of your image. As the process of our democracy unfolds, spread your shelter of peace over our country, that we may have a clear and peaceful future. Heal the wounds and the divisions in our land, so that we can see one another afresh and begin the work of rebuilding together. And let us say, Amen. In anticipation of what we pray will be a safe and peaceful inauguration of our president next week. We turn to page 253, our prayer for healing and wholeness. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless all of us together with all who are sick, all who are in pain, all who are alone, all who are suffering. Eternal God, grant wisdom, insight, and skill to those who bring healing, courage, and faith to the sick, strength to those who care for them. May your presence rest on those who are suffering and bring them comfort. Soon may they know a time of complete healing. Hashtaba agala uvizman kariv. May we know refuat hanefesh, refuat haguf, renewal of body and of spirit. We say Amen. Before we join in singing Debbie Friedman's interpretation of the traditional prayer for healing and wholeness, again in the middle of page 253, these are the names on our Misha Beirach list at Beth Shalom Temple Center in Green Valley. We extend our hearts in support of Chris Anderson, Harvey Beam, Sheila Berman, Nasima Bernhardt, Irene Case, Joyce Cohn, Alan Delman, Heidi Demarest, Dennis Durante, Jerry Gale Feldman, Mark Feldman, Melissa Feldman, Dan Galitz, Jeffrey Saul Gervan, Fall Gidsig, Ruth Gossman, Warren Gratis, Kay Grask, John Halloran, Don Kitts, Nick Lech, Sharon Laws, Fred Legat, Jan Lund, Michelle Matalon, George Morris, Yolanda Pilgus, Bernie Pincus, Marley Pincus, Tallulah Rose, Nancy Schwam, Cliff Schechter, Sabra Schechter, Lori Sherman, Abraham Raphael Ben Shoshana, Lou Simon, Ruth Stevens, Art Webb, Danielle Wernick, Sarah Wernick, Alan Winter, Sherry Wolk, and David Wolpert. I'll pause for a moment if any of you on our Zoom tefillah for this moment, if you have names which you wish to add to the list, whether publicly or privately, we join in prayer for their healing and for their peace. Mishabera Avotenu Mekor Habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Yeah.
For a moment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I left. I just wanted you to know that I left for a few minutes to light my Shabbat candles
Okay, good.
and my father's yahrzeit candle starts tonight.
All right.
So I apologize.
No apology necessary. No apology necessary.
Ruth Ann, is there something with the audio? The audio got very low.
Is it my volume? No, my volume's up. So there are, as well as our thoughts and our prayers for the week to come, we also acknowledge in the Jewish community this weekend, this Shabbat, the memory of Martin Luther King Jr. And I wanted to kind of blend together some words and some teachings, both that relate in a very, very poignant way to the fact that as we are concerned about our country this week, we also take great pride in our sense of democracy and the ability that we have to come together. And I wish to fortify ourselves, I suppose that's the best word, with teachings of one of my teacher's teachers, if I could phrase it that way. Some of you might know the name of Rabbi Leo Beck of blessed memory. Leo Beck in 1933 was the liberal chief rabbi of the Jewish community of Berlin. And without going into a lot of detail, which I certainly could, I've lectured about Leo Beck many, many times in different classes and in different settings. But Leo Beck was the teacher of several of my teachers, including of Rabbi Ernst Conrad of beloved memory, who was the founding rabbi of Temple Kol Ami back in Michigan, where I served as senior rabbi following him for 30 years. Leo Beck was as I mentioned, was the chief rabbi of the liberal Jewish community in Berlin. He was the headmaster of the Hochschule, of the high school, which many of the more elite and studious Jewish boys, young men, were sent to study. Ultimately, the expectation was that many of them would go on to yeshiva and would go on to become rabbis. Leo Baeck had the opportunity to leave Germany in 1933 as the Nazis came to power. He chose to stay in Berlin, in Germany, and serve the community. But he had identified a number of his promising students who, with the help of the North American, especially the US Jewish community, 7 young German boys who were studying with Leo Baeck were brought to safety in the United States. They all came here. Their families were all wiped out in the Holocaust, in the Shoah, but they were saved as a Sharit Pleta remnant of the Jewish community, thanks to the foresight and the courage of Leo Baeck. Baeck survived the war, actually. There are a number of stories about the leadership and the strength that he provided to his community, not only in Germany, but in the concentration camps, especially in Theresienstadt. He went on after the war to serve the Jewish community in London, Great Britain, came to the States to visit, but didn't really live here. He stayed in Great Britain and Europe, serving the community there. In 1933, well, the reason that I was brought to mostly to memories about my study of Leo Baeck and the connection that I had with him is that I attended a presentation the other day upon the publication of a new biography of Leo Baeck by one of my teachers and friends, Michael Meyer from the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Cincinnati. My claim to fame with Michael Meyer is that I babysat his kids quite a number of times, and we had all kinds of conversations, he and his wife and I, obviously, when I was a rabbinic student. But Michael Meyer just published a new biography of Leo Baeck, and he especially shared with us some of these two quotations from Beck's teachings in 1933 as the Nazis were coming to power. And it was suggested for amongst all of us who were on this call in this presentation about the biography the other day, that we should share these words of Leo Baeck from almost 100 years ago, but they still ring true for us in our situation here in the United States. So this is Leo Baeck. Guilty are those who do evil, but guilty on particular before the bar of history are those as well who witness the crime or who know about it and remain silent.
Right.
They're the ones who, without intending it, allow it to occur. Violence gets its way only when freedom is lacking. No one is less free than the person who remains silent when he should be speaking, when he should be admonishing and warning others. He continued, injustice and sin exist in every nation. They come and go, and the people live on. But if the nation as such as a whole joins in the guilt through silence, through indulgence, through looking on, then the misdeed destroys the foundation upon which the nation exists. It collapses underneath it. Nations have perished only when they first remained silent, when people ceased to resist sin and ceased to speak out for justice. So it was suggested by my colleagues, my teachers, and my students that those were words of Leo Baeck, upon which we should reflect as we think back on the events of the last week or two in the United States, and as we look forward to the week to come, and again pray that it will be in safety and in peace.
Amen.
Combining those words with, and there could have been many, many, many more, obviously, with words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who had a very strong connection with the American Jewish community in the days of the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, but also was frequently asked to stand up and speak on behalf of the state of Israel. The condition and the existence of the state of Israel is, some of you will remember, back in the early and mid 1960s was quite precarious. It existed, but we really did not have an awful lot of confidence that the rest of the world was going to let Israel continue to exist and to flourish and become the kind of nation state that it is today. So on many occasions, Dr. King, as the leader of the Black community in North America and his voice being heard all over the world, Dr. King was asked frequently about Israel. And I found this particular quote from a speech that he gave to the Rabbinical Assembly. Now that's the organization of conservative rabbis in North America. This speech was given 2 weeks before his death. It was given March 25th, 1968. He said, "Peace for Israel means security, and we must stand with all our might to protect its right to exist, its territorial integrity. For I see Israel as one of the great outposts of democracy in the world, and a marvelous example of what can be done, how desert land can be transformed into an oasis of brotherhood and democracy. Peace for Israel means security, and that security must be a reality." Again, many of my colleagues and I, especially those of us who were active in the 1960s, can only speculate how, had he lived, Dr. King might have helped Jewish and Black communities foster better understanding of one another's experiences, pains, and to fight collectively for a sense of liberation and freedom and personal respect. What we do know is that Dr. King's vision of a secure Israel and a peaceful Middle East is as relevant today as it was in the 1960s. We know something else too. We know that it's up to each of us, no matter what our religion, what our faith, what our color of skin, we know that it is up to us to help make peace and brotherhood a reality.
Rabbi,
Yes, sir.
could you hear me?
I can hear you, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I thank you for what you read. And I would say, if Dr. Martin Luther King was living today, do you think he might have been met with opposition
Oh, of course.
to Israel? Because today, or for as long as I know, since Dr. King was alive, no one has ever, except what you're reading now, and I didn't know that, so that's why I thank you for that. But would he have been noticed for saying that? Because you have big leaders today in the Black community who unfortunately talk against Israel. For example, you have somebody.
Michael, I'm gonna interrupt you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't think that now is the time necessarily to to get into that. Yeah, I will agree that yes, there are leaders in the Black community and even in our own community, in the Jewish community, who speak out and say some horrible things about Israel. But I would, in my experience and in my reading of where the relations are internationally in this country and internationally between the Jewish community, the formal Jewish community, the established Jewish community, and the established Black community, I would say that relations are indeed are good. I think it certainly would be, they would be better if Martin Luther King and others like him were still around. But in my experience, much of what is assumed that there's not a strong relationship between the Jewish and the Black community on the established level. It really is a relatively strong situation. We can talk about it some other time, but and I'm glad that you are concerned enough about it to mention it. But maybe we can have an opportunity to to look at some things, or to invite a speaker sometime to join us and discuss it or debate it if necessary. But
Well,
I'm gonna say let's move on. But thanks
Yeah,
for
I
thanks
just
for
want to
bringing
say
it.
that I would like to do this with you sometime in the future. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So what I would like to do is continue with our prayers of Aleinu, of adoration, and our memorial prayers in Kaddish. And then at the very end, I want to come back again to thoughts about Dr. King, especially as we remember him on this Martin Luther King Jr. Weekend around North America. So at the bottom of page 282, I would ask you to turn to the bottom of page 282. And again, if you are comfortable, please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach u'ladon hakol, la'tekidu la'liotzer b'reishit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu korim u'mishtachadim u'modim lifnei melech Malchei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And on page 284, Shehu Noteh Shamayim v'Yosei Haaretz u'Moshav Yekaro b'Shamayim Ima u'Shchinatu zo b'Govhei Meromim Hu Eloheinu Eino Emet Malkeinu Epezulato Kakatu B'Torahato V'yadata Hayom B'Hashevota Elevavecha Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim B'Shamayim Ima Ve'al haaretz mitachat eno. 287. V'nehemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Traditionally, those who are not in mourning would be seated at this point. I invite you either to remain standing or be seated if that is your level of tradition. On page 291, it is hard for us to sing of oneness, for our world is not complete. Those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and naught but their memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But that memory can tell us only what we were in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words. What they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives more fully, even in the very shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the ultimate one. In affirming that one, we affirm the worth of each one whose life, excuse me, each one whose life now ended brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone and every life does find its purpose. We think of loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, even during this past week. We honor the memories of Fran Devine and Saul Wise. And we remember those who died at this season in years past, as well as those whom we draw into our hearts with our own during the 11 months since their passing from our midst. We remember Jessica Bakke, Ralph Block, Terry Freed, Marion Friedman, Isabella Gonzalez, Jeannie Gordon, Ashley Lake Hamilton, Martin Hollander, Norman Clapman, Michelle Kohana, Jack Kramer, Werner Lawson, Isaac Richard Mayo, Janelle Mitchell, Jim Mardinley, Shmuel Shaham Ben Chanoch, Kenny Spears, Faye Starr, Bud Stein, Stephen Weig, Yetta Weston, Alan Winfield, and Loretta Ziegelman. And there are many whom we remember, especially this week and in the weeks to come, through the Jewish month, the Hebrew month of Shevat. We read their names in holiness and memory and respect. Pearl Atlas, Edith Brightman, Hyman Cohn, Fanny Dansky, Patricia M. Dabrodsky, Robert Dillard, Francis Ehrenberg, Rose Fuhrer, Ralph Geller, Sam Goldman, Bertha Ruth Gossman, Sidney Gravitz, Bernice Greenfield, Dr. Irving Greenfield, Lita Hannon, Frank Karsh, Charles Katz and Janet Katz, Nathaniel Levy, Morris Nathan, Robert Olkhurst, Lila Phillips, Lee Polanski, Irvin Rosenstein, Charles Ruttell, Michael Schulman, Rosalind Serrata, Stanley Stein, Aaron Weston, Lee Weiner, and Ivan Winfield. Are there other names? Michael, I know that you said your father's yahrzeit. Are there other names as well? We Zichronam Livracha. May their memories truly be for a blessing for their families and for all. The words of the Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shmei Rabbah Bialma divrach Hirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedcho Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mivorach leolam u'lomei omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmeid kudsha barichu La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam rabba min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma huya aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol b'nei adam v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, as well as to all of humanity. And we say, Amen. Again, I would invite you to please be seated. Ruth Ann, please join with me tomorrow morning. Torah study is at 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Sunday, the bagel pickup,
There
if
will-
you've ordered
there should-
them,
there should
is
be
12
bagels.
to 2.
We have access to the temple. There should be
Yay.
bagels.
Okay, so they can make the bagels and we can hand out the bagels.
Right.
Okay. It's a lovely project. It's overfilled. My cup overfloweth, as we say. With the bagel dough. And the other kind of dough, the contributions are going to support the local food banks. So it's a lovely gesture that the Men's Club is providing for us, and they hope to do this monthly now. So watch for the announcements if you like Lenny's Bagels. What else do we have to announce?
Nothing. It's a quiet
Nothing.
week. What we have the which the inauguration on the 20th, and we didn't want to do anything to compete with
Okay.
that. But on the 27th, we have the movie that we're going to try again. And then the following Wednesday, we're going to do another Name That Tune.
Okay, and isn't there an annual meeting coming up as well?
Yeah, you don't have to attend that. That's okay by me.
Oh.
I don't want to attend it either.
We don't? Oh, okay.
On the 25th is the annual meeting at 2:00 via Zoom.
Right. Okay. All right. So I thank you for joining with us for this Shabbat. Again, our apologies for having to change around our formats here. In my opinion, Zoom, it's nice to be able to see people, but Zoom doesn't quite work as well as the live stream from my opinion. But I appreciate your joining with us. And thanks to Ruth Ann for doing the technology again. So here's how I would like to conclude, again, with a personal connection. I found a YouTube recording of the Adon Olam as the arrangement that was composed by Louis Lewandowski, who was one of the premier Jewish composers in the 19th century. Born in Poland, but lived most of his life and died in Germany, actually in Berlin as well. And I distinctly remember that on April 5th, it was, of 1968, the Reform congregations in Cleveland, which is where I was living, all the Reform congregations had a tradition that they would gather together for a Sabbath worship on the Shabbat before Passover, and we would rotate around which synagogue would host the service, which rabbi or set of rabbis and cantors would conduct the service, and which rabbi would give the major sermon. It rotated around every year. But in 1968, the service happened to be the day after Martin Luther King was shot. He was shot on April 4th, 1968. That night, I was supposed to have been leading a model Seder for non-Jewish students at Kent State University, south of Cleveland. But then on the next day, on the Friday night, all of the Reform congregations in Cleveland were gathering together for a service, and of course, the sanctuary was overflowing. The congregation that I was serving as a rabbinic intern was Brit Emuth congregation. Gary Friedman remembers that. Brit Emuth congregation in the suburbs of Cleveland. And so our congregation was hosting this major event. My father, of blessed memory, was the choir director. So there was a joint choir from all of the different synagogues. And here's the point of the story. And this particular Adon Olam was sung, was performed. It was very familiar to the people of the Reform congregations in the mid-1960s. And it took on a special meaning because there were so many of us there paying tribute in the midst of our own shock at the assassination of Dr. King. So it was 8 days before Passover when we would be celebrating our own liberation. The speaker, the sermonizer that night was Rabbi Arthur Lelyveld, of blessed memory, of the Fairmount Temple, who 1 year previously had been marching with Dr. King. There was a picture in the New York Times and many things of Rabbi Lelyveld's head all bloodied as he had been attacked during the peaceful civil rights marches. But he gave the sermon that night memorializing Dr. King, and at the end of the worship, literally most of the Reformed Jewish community of Cleveland was together. Probably there were 2,000 people all singing along with this particular rendition of Adon Olam. The YouTube that we have here is actually the Zamir Chorale in Boston singing it. But when I saw the YouTube, it reminded me perfectly, and I said, we need to include this on Martin Luther King Shabbat. It's especially meaningful for me. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom to all.
Shalom Shabbat.
Shalom. Shabbat
Shabbat
Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat,
Shalom.
Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. A good Shabbos to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shalom Shabbat.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.